Okay, so what did you not like about the Phoenix change?
The added cost to his flashbang. I think Breach it just makes Breach more viable, and it should be equal. And it just feels like Breach was the only thing not really touched in this patch. And I know a lot of people are saying Breach should get his flash at least should be fixed a bit. I think Phoenix was a perfect agent. I think no one was complaining about Phoenix. The only time you ever heard people complain about Phoenix was when his flashbang would flashbang his own
accidentally
team.
flash your
yeah. But aside from that, who was complaining about Phoenix? Like, he's a fun kid. He's a fun agent to watch. His ultimate can make some great plays. Not overpowered, not underpowered. He was viable in pro and low tiers. Like, he seemed like a perfectly balanced character. So it doesn't kill Phoenix at all. 100 cred bump to his flashbang isn't the end of the world. He's still going to be used. He's still a viable agent and probably the best duelist in the game still. But I still think he was perfect. I thought he was perfect. Don't change Phoenix.
The chat is taking the words out of my mouth right now, by the way. So I think Breach is actually the best character in the game right now because not just because of the Phoenix change, but also because Sage got nerfed and Cypher got nerfed, right? And Sage was probably the best character in the game pre this patch. Definitely consistently, right? Like, but I think like Breach and Brim are probably the strongest ones. I think Breach is considerably stronger than Brimstone, although Brimstone has his strengths. The big thing now, though, actually with the Sage nerf that's really bothered me is that you can't buy Ghost and Wall round 1 because the wall's like actually super important. Like actually right here on Split in the clip that we have, that's a great place to wall if you're on the attacker side of things right there because you're able to file in and have a little bit of guard from heaven. Right, if you're filing in, and as a Sage, you don't necessarily want to be the person who has like a frenzy, which you can still buy with the wall. Have a frenzy and go in and like just spray everyone. You want to be able to tap, right? You want to be able to tap the ghost. You want to be able to get the headshot. You want to be able to get the one tap kill, right? Or a couple, 3, 4 different bullets depending on what you're doing. But you don't want to be the fast firer. So I think that was Sage definitely getting nerfed, like kind of opens the door for Breach. The other thing, Skin Sage said this also. I've been playing a lot of Cypher lately to learn as a secondary for myself, and I actually hate the cage change. I think it's awful because the whole idea, or at least the way people were playing him when he first started, was that you would loop your cage with your tripwire, so someone would slow. And presumably on a push, it would give you enough time if you're on defense that they hit the tripwire, and then you're able to put up the cage, and they can't push as fast, which gives your team more time to rotate when you make that call. Right? That was the way people were playing Cypher. If they were playing defense, if they were playing offense, you were trying to do the other. You were trying to give yourself enough time to communicate to your team to turn around and look behind you, right? Because you're playing lurk in most instances. So I actually don't like the slow change at all. It doesn't last long enough to Skin Sage's point. It doesn't last long enough to be a smoke. There are other characters with more effective smokes. One we're going to talk about here, I think, is Omen, who actually got a lot of love this patch to be like sort of a secondary to Brimstone in some ways. But like the Cypher is not as effective. Cypher is not as effective using smokes as Brimstone or Omen. He is effective. The only thing I still like about Cage is being able to put them on site to allow me to transition from spot 1 to spot 2 if I'm holding site. Right? I did this in Split yesterday during a game. I was holding behind that box where people like to plant in the center of site. I was able to move back into the far right corner, but using a smoke and walking to my advantage to not be seen. Right? Because they weren't hard pushing quick enough, and it deters them a little bit using the screen. But I think the screen's going to become really ineffective, which is sad because I think Cypher was strong, but I don't think it was like terribly busted.
I think he was busted high elo. I think that's the thing. Talking to a few of the pros, they thought Cypher was as busted or even more busted than Sage. So I think in like pro play, this change is perfect. I think I've talked to a few pros, and they've all said like most of the agents now feel pretty viable, and they don't feel like there's any character that's too overpowered, maybe Breach, but even so, he's not like have to play every single round or every single game or every single situation. But I do think in maybe like lower elos or below like Diamond, Cypher wasn't as broken as he was in high elos. So I think he does.
I like the Cypher change for the spy cam. I love that the cooldown was increased because for me that was ridiculous. A 30-second cooldown. You can have a spy cam multiple times in one round. At least now at 45 seconds, it's the possibilities a lot less.
I think the big thing here in this patch though is the fact that you look at someone like Sage, and even with the nerf, she's still going to be one of the best characters in the game because of the kit. In my opinion, she is comparable to probably like Morgana or Thresh in League. Like, no matter how much you put, like, you'd literally have to alter her kit to make her irrelevant. She's always going to have relevance in certain situations, right? The res is such a powerful tool to sort of like push back games and turn momentum, and to sort of even it out if you're alone or if you're in a small number situation versus a large number situation. So like, no matter how much you sort of like step on Sage's throat and nerf her, like, she's still going to be incredibly relevant. And I think that's what makes her an interesting character. But I do think Breach is the strongest right now. He didn't get touched, and he's great. Like, Breach is a very, very good character. He's hard though. He is not easy to play.
My thing with the agent balance is that I don't mind Sage being overpowered. I don't mind Cypher being overpowered when it comes to intel. I don't mind, Phoenix or Breach being overpowered when it comes to their flashbangs and their entry. I want things to be overpowered. I would much rather this game go the course of Dota, where if everything's overpowered, nothing's overpowered, than trying to nerf everything and trying to make everyone feel like they're just shooting, pellets with, a slingshot instead of a gun. I don't mind the overpoweredness of characters. I think Sage and Cypher got necessary nerfs, especially Sage for slow orbs, to make her less of 100% must pick every game. And I'm sure as more agents, and I think that's another thing, is that we only have 10 agents. We're going to have 2 more very soon, hopefully whenever lunch comes. And I would not be surprised if we got a new agent every month or so. So we're going to have a game where there's going to be 40 different agents, and it's going to get a lot more difficult for Riot to nerf and buff and to have a perfectly balanced game, which will never happen because so many different elements thrown into a game that's where the main premise of this game is to break it, right? To defy the limits, to do things that, no one can think of. When you have all these characters with so many different spells, it's never going to be perfect, but I don't mind it. I like the overpoweredness. And I think right now, I don't have too many complaints agent-wise. I think it's pretty balanced. I find most of the agents pretty fun. I get annoyed by some of them, but I'm, a low-tier player, so I have to deal with it. And I think right now in high elo, most people are seemingly feeling the same way, where it's like, sure, Sage can be annoying, Cypher can be annoying, but it's pretty balanced.
I was trying to say this earlier, but I think we're seeing how they're starting to address their balance philosophy for this game, like specifically in the wording that we all know Sage is OP. I don't really know how much to read into that, because I don't think it was as much that Sage was OP, but more that, depending on your definition of overpowered, she was required to be on every team, and she still is, right? Because she's the only healer. Like, by design, like Jacob said, her kit is necessary for every team. Similarly with Vision agents, specifically Cypher, because he's kind of definitively the stronger one right now. You need at least one of those on your team. And then Breach, I would say, is more of a genuine overpowered, in the traditional sense. So I am really curious to see how they are going to address this, because the fact that Breach wasn't touched, and they did make the changes to Sage, and they did make the changes to Cypher, I think says a lot about their balance philosophy and how they're looking at this game. Other than